Have you ever wondered how a single man managed to steal the most famous painting in the world, the Mona Lisa, and keep it hidden for over 2 years? Today, we're diving deep into the daring theft that shook the art world and the fascinating story of the man who stole the Mona Lisa. Our story takes us back to the early 20th century, a time when the world was on the brink of change. In the heart of Paris, the Mona Lisa, residing peacefully in the Louvre, cast her timeless spell. But there was one man, Vincenzo Perrugia, who couldn't resist her appeal. Vincenzo Perrugia, an Italian handyman, found himself captivated by the Mona Lisa's magnificent beauty. He spent his days laboring within the Louvre's hallowed halls, often under her watchful gaze. Each day, he saw the crowds of admirers, the flash of cameras, and the awed whispers of those who came from all corners of the world to behold her. But Perrugia saw something else in those eyes. The eyes of the Mona Lisa herself, whose gaze seemed to follow him as he worked. It was as if she was speaking to him, and her message was clear. She belonged in Italy. In his heart, Perrugia believed he was on a mission to right a historical wrong. Picture yourself in Perrugia's shoes, a man with Italian heritage working in a foreign land. He believed that the Mona Lisa, painted by the Italian genius Leonardo da Vinci, had been wrongfully taken from his homeland. It was a matter of national pride, a deep-rooted conviction that drove him to make a bold, audacious move. As you stand in his shoes, you begin to understand that his motive wasn't at all about fame or fortune, but rather a matter of passionate patriotism. In 1911, on an August morning much like any other, Vincenzo Perrugia would set his plan in motion, driven by the belief that he was the custodian of the Mona Lisa's true destiny. But little did he know that his actions would trigger a chain of events that would forever etch his name into the annals of art history. The night before the audacious theft, Paris lay cloaked in shadows, as if the city itself sensed the impending turmoil. Vincenzo Perrugia, having meticulously plotted his daring plan, spent those final hours restless, his heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and fear. As the moon cast an eerie glow over the Louvre, Perrugia, disguised as a simple workman, made his way through the labyrinthine corridors, his heart racing in his chest. The anticipation hung in the air like a heavy fog. He had timed his actions to perfection. The world would be none the wiser until dawn. He approached the Mona Lisa's chamber, and there she was, bathed in the gentle moonlight that filtered through the windows. The world-famous smile remained unaltered, but her destiny was about to change forever. Perrugia, now in front of the masterpiece, wasted no time and sprang into action. In an instant, he snatched the Mona Lisa from her perch, removed her from her frame, and concealed her carefully inside of a blanket. The morning of August 21st, 1911, dawned with a sense of normalcy. Visitors thronged outside the Louvre, eager to gaze upon the masterpiece. But there was an eerie calmness in the air as Perrugia, now hidden within the museum, watched and waited. As the first rays of sunlight streamed into the gallery, Perrugia concealed the painting beneath his workman's smock and calmly made his escape through the museum's labyrinthine hallways. The painting, once the epicenter of the art world, was now in the hands of a man driven by an unshakable belief. Perrugia had stolen the Mona Lisa, but the world would not learn of this audacious theft until the Louvre's doors opened to the public, revealing the gaping void where the world's most famous painting once hung. The robbery had been executed with a daring precision that would go down in history as one of the boldest crimes ever committed against art. In the wake of Vincenzo Perrugia's audacious theft, the Louvre Museum descended into chaos on that fateful August morning. As the doors swung open to the eager crowd, there was a collective gasp of disbelief. The Mona Lisa, the beloved masterpiece that had graced the museum's walls for centuries, had vanished without a trace. The once bustling galleries were now scenes of bewilderment and anguish. Visitors and staff alike couldn't comprehend what had transpired. It was a moment of sheer pandemonium as the news of the theft rippled through the crowd. Museum officials and law enforcement sprang into action, their faces etched with worry. The hunt for the stolen masterpiece began in earnest. Imagine the frantic conversations and urgent phone calls that crisscrossed Paris as authorities mobilized to recover the irreplaceable artwork. The city was on high alert as law enforcement launched a massive manhunt for Perrugia, who had fled with the priceless painting in his possession. The thief had managed to vanish into the streets of Paris, leaving behind a vacuum of despair at the Louvre. The immediate hours and days following the theft were a whirlwind of activity, with investigators and law enforcement officials pursuing every lead and avenue, determined to bring the stolen masterpiece back to its rightful place. The world watched with bated breath as the search for the Mona Lisa unfolded, and the Louvre remained a somber reminder of the audacity of art theft. Meanwhile, with the Mona Lisa in his possession, Vincenzo Perrugia was a man on the run, his heart pounding with a mixture of triumph and trepidation. He had managed to outwit the authorities and escape the Louvre Museum, clutching the soon-to-be world's most famous painting beneath his clothing. He knew that his actions had thrust him into the spotlight, and he needed to disappear swiftly. Perrugia's journey led him to this humble apartment in the heart of the city. There, hidden from the world, he carefully concealed the Mona Lisa under a false bottom of a wooden clothing trunk. In those days following the burglary, as Paris was gripped by the frenzy of the missing masterpiece, Perrugia lived a dual life. By day, he maintained his guise as a worker, blending into the tapestry of the city's daily life. But by night, he returned to this secret hideaway, where the enigmatic Mona Lisa watched over him. The authorities, meanwhile, were determined to solve the mystery of the stolen painting. Law enforcement officials questioned museum staff, visitors, and anyone who might have had information about the theft. They even ransacked Perrugia's apartment during their search, but found no trace of the missing masterpiece. Perrugia, skillful in evading capture, managed to remain elusive, even as the search for him intensified. Vincenzo Perrugia's life on the run was marked by a constant, adrenaline-fueled dance with the authorities. But as the months turned into years, the Mona Lisa was now undoubtedly the most famous painting on the planet, and maintaining his stolen treasure became an increasingly complex challenge. How could he continue to keep the Mona Lisa hidden from a world that was growing ever more determined to find her? He knew that every day, the net closed in a little tighter, but he had one ace up his sleeve. A deep-seated conviction that he was the Mona Lisa's rightful custodian, driven by an unwavering sense of patriotism. This conviction likely sustained him through the long, arduous wait. In the spring of 1913, over 2 years after the theft, a seemingly unrelated incident would change the course of history. Perrugia, in a desperate attempt to avoid capture, reached out to an art dealer in Florence, Italy, with a curious proposition. He intended to sell the stolen masterpiece back to Italy, the country he believed it truly belonged to. The dealer, suspicious of the offer, contacted the authorities. Perrugia's audacious plan had ultimately betrayed him. Italian detectives, along with their French counterparts, swiftly moved in to apprehend him. Imagine the shock and disbelief that must have washed over him as he was taken into custody, betrayed by his country, and watching his precious burden slip away from his grasp. As Perrugia was interrogated, the world learned the astonishing truth. He had kept the Mona Lisa hidden for over 2 years, right under the noses of those hunting him. The painting had been stored safely within the confines of his modest apartment, concealed behind a false panel all along. Now, with Perrugia in custody and the Mona Lisa safely recovered, the story takes an intriguing turn. The world watched with awe as Vincenzo Perrugia stood trial for his audacious theft, eager to see justice served. Perrugia, a man driven by a fervent belief in his mission to return the Mona Lisa to Italy, presented a curious defense. He argued that he had stolen the painting out of patriotic duty, convinced that he was righting a historical wrong. Perrugia's defense attorney passionately argued that his actions were motivated by a desire to restore a piece of Italian heritage. It was an argument that struck a chord with some, leading to debates about whether Perrugia was a criminal or a misguided patriot. Ultimately, the court rendered its verdict, a verdict that would shake the legacy of the Mona Lisa theft. Vincenzo Perrugia was found guilty of the theft, but his sentence was surprisingly lenient. He received a relatively short prison term, serving just over a year for his crime. It was a sentence that left many puzzled, as they had expected a harsher punishment for the man who had stolen the most famous painting in the world. The legal chapter of this captivating tale added another layer of complexity to the Mona Lisa's story, leading questions about whether justice had truly been served or if Perrugia's audacious act had left a lasting mark on how the world perceived the enigmatic masterpiece. Tell us what you think in the comments below. Was Perrugia's act justified, or do you think he should have served more time in prison? And if you enjoyed this enticing story, check out some of my other videos right here. Until next time.